So the final UFC event of the year did just take place in Tampa, Florida, and it's now going to be about 3 weeks until we do get another one. So I wanted to do a full card review of this card, and then just kind of talk about what I'm going to try and do over the next few weeks on my channel. I do have intentions to still upload videos over the next few weeks, whether it do be new UFC news, which I think we are probably going to get. I do want to do a couple of lists as well, like top 10 KOs of the year, top 5 events of the year, top 10 subs of the year, stuff like that as well. And I do kind of have a couple of discussion pieces that I probably want to make videos on about, like also my GOAT list, which seems to be very debated these days. So I'm sure that would go over very well if I was to reveal it and make up a list. But anyways, the card was great. I really enjoyed the card. I do want to be a bit transparent though. I did miss the prelims live because I was competing in a disc golf tournament. If you guys don't know, that is my competitive sport at the moment. And yeah, that's kind of it. So I actually have rewatched the prelims just recently, and I did catch the full main card live. In fact, I was actually driving home when Sterling versus Tokos was on. So, don't tell anyone, but I was watching it on my phone as I was driving home. Anyway, Piero Rodriguez beat Josephine Knudsen. Knudsen just can't defend a takedown. That was really sad to see because Knudsen is actually a fighter I was really high on, and I actually thought that she could be a really good prospect at strawweight given her kickboxing background. Now, she did lose the fight, and she didn't look great against Rodriguez, but Rodriguez at one point was a very hyped up prospect in her own right, so I don't think it's too big of a loss to take. I think that Knudsen probably could beat a lot of strikers in this division. I just think it was a tough one to watch for me, man. And then Davy Grant beat up Ramon Taveras quite a bit. I was not confident in this pick whatsoever, and a lot of people were very high on Taveras going into this one. In fact, I think that Taveras was an underdog at one point, or maybe Grant was an underdog at one point, and the lines finished even, so a lot of money did come in on whatever the underdog side was in at the time. And ultimately Grant prevailed. I think Grant landed like 150 strikes in this fight, which is quite impressive. Taveras is only getting credited with about 60 or 70. And in the fight, it looked like in the first round it was pretty competitive, but Grant just really started to take over. And just the one I kind of did mention in the breakdown, which is why I did ultimately pick Grant, is the fact that he does have so many more options on the feet. He is not just a boxer, he's a kickboxer. And Taveras really is only a boxer. Now, he is a pretty decent boxer, but some of his wins, like over Serhii Sidi, aren't really over great strikers themselves. And I think that Davy Grant has kind of proven, even though in very close losses to, like, Yanez, for example, he can really hang in there. And I think that, yeah, Grant had a good performance, man. He just outstruck him significantly. Maverick defeated Jamie Lynn Horth. She didn't really just shoot for takedowns over and over and over again like I necessarily expected, but ultimately she landed the more strikes. She got the control time. She complained on her Twitter about some back of the head shots, which were there. I think Jamie Lynn Horth hit her in the back of the head 3 times and was warned about it twice, or 3 different moments, was warned about it twice, I should say. So not good to see there, but Maverick won. Wasn't her best performance considering I did think that this was a very significant step down in competition. But she won the fight, and that's what mattered. Angelo had her in the safety parlay, which did win this week as well. And Angelo also said if you don't want to bet on Maverick, you can bet on the over 2.5, which also hit too. So good work, Angelo. I'm sure he is absolutely stoked about this one. And Felipe Lima beat Miles Johns. I picked Lima by finish. He didn't get the finish, but man, he did look good in the matchup. Now, he mixed in takedowns with pretty aggressive striking, and this guy, I think once he does get a fight on a full camp at 135 pounds, because being at 145 here, this must have been a short notice fight, and I just honestly didn't know that I was at 145. I obviously didn't change the pick because Lima was one of my most confident picks on the card. But Felipe Lima, this guy's the real deal, and at 135, I think he probably could do quite a bit of damage. He shot for like 9 takedowns on Miles Johns. On the feet, he was pressuring Johns. It kind of just looked like Johns never was given an opportunity to get his own thing going. And that's the thing that I do struggle with Miles Johns, though, is I don't know what Miles Johns' thing is. There are fights out there where Johns has shot for 10 takedowns. There are fights out there which Johns has shot for 0 takedowns. Johns is just a fighter that I just do not understand what he's going to do when he gets out there. But Lima went out there and just kind of beat up John's like nearly everywhere. The grappling exchanges were quite good. I think at the third round, Lima had a rear naked choke in, which didn't end up happening, but ultimately was pretty good. Sean Woodson went out there and knocked out Fernando Padilla. Padilla come out swinging, and as I did say in my breakdown, this fight actually was quite hilarious to watch. Both of these guys have just insane builds for the weight class. I think Woodson 6'2", Padilla 6'1". Both of these guys are just super thin, tall guys at 145 pounds, and it was kind of a hilarious matchmaking, I'll be honest. Padilla started strong though. He came out aggressive. He came out with a lot of knees to the body in the clinch, especially, and he was just coming out and he kind of put it on Woodson a little bit. Woodson, I believe, also was taken down at one point, very early on into the fight, but he worked his way back up. And Woodson looked like he was kind of getting caught off guard quite a bit by the aggression of Padilla to start off the fight. And it almost looked like to me, I don't know if anyone else saw this or if I'm just kind of delusional, it almost looked like to me that Woodson was starting to actually really tire out from the pressure that Padilla was just putting on him to start out. Like, it looked like Woodson was kind of breathing pretty heavy about 3 or 4 minutes into that round. But ultimately, it didn't matter. Woodson landed a 3-piece combo. I believe all 3 shots just landed hard. Padilla was rocked and moving backwards. And then he landed 2 strikes in the follow-up, which both landed. And that's what ultimately put Padilla down. And then he finished him off. Pretty good performance for Woodson. I do think that the fact that he was able to get pressured and beaten up pretty quickly early on is maybe something to worry about, but I don't know. Woodson's a tricky fighter for anyone to deal with at 145 pounds with his height, and he just showed that he does have the power to knock you out. I think it was a good performance for Woodson. I think that Woodson is now, honestly, at this point, probably knocking on the door of either a top 15 opportunity or a fight that's going to give him the top 15 opportunity. In fact, you know what? He is getting a top 15 shot next, surely. He just beat Alex Caceres, who has been ranked at like 14 and 15 for a very long time. So I think ultimately Woodson, it's about time that we see Woodson get a top 15 opportunity. And Charles Rodin's a pretty solid fighter as well, even though he's now in a different weight class. Joel Alvarez just smoked Drakkar Klose. Probably deserving of a top 15 opportunity himself. Now, there's a lot of really tough guys in the top 15 at 155. Alvarez might be able to sneak his way in there, honestly. This guy has really sorted his stuff out. He must have hired a nutritionist, I don't know. But he's just making the weight class so much better than he was in the past. He used to miss weight relatively regularly. And now he's making the weight. And he's on 2 back-to-back really top performances. And just against Klose, like the striking looked so much better. He hurt Klose initially with a straight right hand, which you don't necessarily see all the time from Joel because he is a grappler. Like, he's got 17 wins by sub. But the striking has really come along, and he hurt Drakkar with that right hand, and then he finished it with the flying knee. And it looked like he actually just initially, kind of out of just pure reaction, went to try and get a standing guillotine or something along those lines and try and lock something up, and then he was like, oh wow, Drakkar Klose is knocked out. So with his left hand he had like the one-arm guillotine locked in, and then with his right hand he kind of just finished off Drakkar Klose and knocked him out. So pretty rough loss for Klose. I mean, he had his family in the crowd. You know, he just got knocked out. It's just this is what it is. But anyways, Joel Alvarez, huge performance. I think at this point now, he's deserving of either a top 15 shot or someone that's going to get him into the top 15. Michael Johnson just knocked out Otman Azaitar. Otman Azaitar is kind of an odd fighter to me. Like, I just don't know if he's really got it anymore. There's 3 losses in a row now. I think you just do the Darius Flowers fight next. That would be quite fun, I'll be honest. But yeah, I don't even know if Azaitar's going to be in the UFC after this. He just didn't look that good, man. Like, it looked like he had no defense the whole fight. His hands were pretty low the whole fight. Whenever he threw a kick, like, he would drop both hands. It was really weird. And he would be pretty slow. Like, in the past, when he was on top, when he was undefeated, 13-0, this guy was coming forward and just bombing away and knocking people out. And it just looks like he's maybe lost that confidence. Maybe he's not doing as much training as he did in the past. I don't know. Maybe he's got other things going on in his life. But it just doesn't look like Otman Azaitar is the same guy as he once was, which is a shame to see. But for Michael Johnson, I picked Michael Johnson. I expected actually Johnson to shoot for some takedowns, but he did just kind of remind me, and I think everyone else, that his boxing is still pretty slick. And that's what he ended up doing, man. He ended up hurting Otman Azaitar a few times in the first round, knocked him out in the second round with like a brutal right hook, but the ground and pound afterwards. As Aita was out, he was knocked out, and then Johnson hit him with a couple more extra strikes. Personally, this was my favorite KO of the night, and he did get the performance bonus, so pretty happy about that for Michael Johnson, a veteran now. I mean, this guy just keeps going. There's a lot of fun fights out there for Michael Johnson, honestly. I don't know just off the top of my head who we should fight next, but there's some good options, man, honestly. Navajo Sterling beat Tuko Tokos. It was a good performance for Navajo Sterling, but I also think at the same time it was somewhat disappointing. Now, the reason why I think that it was a good performance for Sterling is the fact that you need to consider before coming into this fight, he had 5 professional fights as an MMA fighter, and now he's just added 15 minutes of experience to his MMA career. And not only has he added 15 minutes of experience to his MMA career, he's also added a fight against a guy that, although really being a lot less skilled than him, did give him a pretty tough night out by just being there, by not getting knocked out quite literally, and shooting for takedowns on him over and over and over again. Being like super realistic about this though, it has kind of made me think that Navajo Sterling is going to need a little bit more time to develop to start taking the harder fights. I thought that this was a layout for Sterling. Even in hindsight with the win, it was a layout for Sterling. He didn't get the KO like I expected, but he did find a very calm performance, kind of like an Israel Adesanya-esque performance. He wasn't too aggressive. He just kind of took his shots in moments. There were opportunities there for him to have gotten aggressive, but I think he just decided to not take them, either out of lack of experience or out of fear of getting taken down. So I think that there's fights out there for Sterling, man. I think that I would like to see Sterling kind of be tested now against a striker, which would be quite fun. But yeah, he's only 6-0 in his professional career. This guy's got time. I mean, Navajo Sterling versus like Ozzy Diaz honestly sounds really cool to me, which would be quite fun. I think the original matchup, wasn't he booked against Brenton Ribeiro, or am I just kind of... He was never booked against Brenton Ribeiro. I wouldn't mind that if Brenton still got his job. I think he does. But anyway, Daniel Marcos beat up Adrian Yanez. He didn't beat up Adrian Yanez, did he? It was actually a very close fight, and I think it came down to the second round, which I think Daniel Marcos did ended up taking against Yanez. But if you actually look at the numbers, Yanez landed slightly more significant strikes than Daniel Marcos did. It was a close fight. It really was. But the thing about Adrian Yanez is I feel like in this fight, kind of like Navajo Sterling, I'll be honest, there was opportunity out there for Adrian Yanez to get aggressive, to try and find a finish against Marcos. I think the end of the third round is a pretty good example of that. And he just didn't really like pull the trigger as much as he potentially could have. Maybe that was just out of, once again, fear of getting knocked out, because Yanez has been KO'd before. Yanez has been, for lack of a better term, I'm not going to say it, but he's been showing levels before against other like more veteran opponents, and maybe he was afraid of that happening again. But I feel like he just didn't take the risks needed to beat a guy like Daniel Marcos. And for Daniel Marcos, this guy's now 17-0. Which is just complete insanity. I would like to see Daniel Marcos maybe take another step up in competition. I don't want to just pad Daniel Marcos' record at this point. And the thing about Marcos is he's a guy that I've never really been that high on until recently. And after he did win his most recent fight, before he fought Yanez, I was like, wow, this guy's in control on the feet against Castaneda. This guy's good. This guy's in control. You know what? Rebook the Said Nurmagomedov fight. I actually think Said would win that fight, but that's the perfect reason to give him that fight, is it not? So I'd like to see that next. Let's move up. Dustin Jacoby got the bonus against Vitor Petrino. Admittedly, the first 2 rounds were pretty boring, and Vitor Petrino likely was holding a lead going into the third round. Maybe he wasn't holding a lead. If not, it was 1-1, but it was low volume. I think Vitor Petrino, out of the 2, had attempted the less strikes, but he had landed more. And Dustin Jacoby had attempted more, but he had landed less. But I think it's just because of Jacoby's style. Like, he just feints so many times. Like, he just kind of, like, he does his feint, and maybe they count that as a strike attempt, because even sometimes he's, like, halfway into the strike and he just pulls it back. So, anyways, Jacoby won, though. In the end, in the third round, Vitor Petrino, I believe it was a massive left hook that he threw, and he kind of, like, how did he do it? He kind of, like, threw it high, and he ducked into it. And then Jacoby, the way that he threw the hook, though, he left his side wide open, and Jacoby just smoked a right hand right on the perfect spot, you know, when you get him, and he snap his neck, and Vitrino was He was out, man. He was on his back, and then Jacoby did land, I think, one big ground and pound strike. But Petrino was done. The fight was won for Jacoby. Good performance overall. I mean, it wasn't that fun, but for Dustin Jacoby, it really does secure himself as still a guy to look out for at 205 pounds. Sorry, because he was 1-4 in his last five. Now, albeit against really good opponents, he's a guy that has been ranked before as well. And I think ultimately for Jacoby, this kind of just gives you the I guess like the it makes you think to keep your eye on him is kind of what I'm trying to say. So we will move up now to Manuel Cup versus Bruno Silva. Manuel Cup called for a title shot, and when you really think about it, I don't mind it. It would be another rematch for Pantoja, but Cup did arguably win that fight against Pantoja. It was a very close one though, in Cup's debut when he was signed from Ryzen. And if you really think about it, aside from Kai Kara France, who once again Pantoja has already beaten before, there isn't really that many contenders out there for Pantoja to fight. But the problem is, and this is actually something that a lot of people do bring up. The problem is though, I think that Carp is going to be too low ranked for Pantoja to just fight him. You know, I'd like to see Pantoja in a real like ideal world. I'd actually like to see Carp versus Kai Kara France for a number one contender fight, and I think that's what a lot of people are going to call for. But you've got to keep Pantoja active. This is a champion that's willing to fight 3 times a year. You don't have that. You don't have much of that at all around. And I think that maybe you do just need to keep Pantoja busy. Maybe you do just say, oh, hey, Pantoja, we're going to do an event in Brazil in April. Do you want to fight Carp? And he probably would take that, you know. But for Carp, I would like to see him fight Kai Kara France. Maybe Pantoja just has to beat up Brandon Moreno for a 4th time. I don't know. But for this fight, Carp started out pretty slow, as in, like, I mean, like, the first 2 minutes. The first 2 minutes, Bruno Silva come out swinging, and he was landing some big shots. You could see the power that Bruno Silva was possessing in that fight. And then Carp started to take over. And then the kicks to the nuts did start to take over. The first one, though, was purely accidental. It was just a timing thing as Carp was moving forward, and Bruno Silva threw up a teep or a push kick in there, right into the crown jewels, and Carp did get hurt for the first time, but then Carp just started to style on him, man. He was just beating the piss out of him, really. And then he was like doing his dances, putting his hands behind his back, like calling for him to come towards him, like Adesanya used to do. And Bruno Silva just kicked him in the nuts again. Got a point deducted. Carp was pretty hurt. Same thing happened again. Carp started getting his flow state. He started getting really like kind of in the moment. Like he was just landing whatever he wanted to land. He couldn't miss for moments against Silva. And then Silva kicked him in the nuts again. I mean, I don't know where he learned that trick from. I mean, I'm not gonna say who he probably learned it from, but yeah, he probably learned that trick from the UFC fighter that he did train with regularly, and that ultimately didn't work because he got knocked out in the 3rd round. I thought that this was probably Camp's best performance in the UFC. Aside the ball shots do really hurt the replayability of the fight, unfortunately. But if you just kind of take out the minutes that were lost due to Silva just kicking him in the ballsack, this was Carp's best fight, I thought. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe someone else enjoyed something else more, but I thought that Carp looked best in this one. Maybe gets a title shot. I would like to see him fight Kai Kara France. That would be really ideal to me, but it'll be interesting to see what they do next. Then Cup Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo. They did go to war. Billy Quarantillo really annoyed me in this fight. I will say, but first of all, I do want to, of course, congratulate Cup Swanson here. He was talking about retirement before this fight. It sounds like he's gonna do one more, and if they do one more, I would love it to be against a veteran, and maybe against like Clay Guida or something like that. I don't know, or maybe against just someone else at 145 pounds. I mean, like Nate Landwehr, would that be too high up in the rankings? I don't know, but I feel like these options out there for Cub Swanson to have a really cool. I mean, is Darren Elkin still going? That could be cool. I think they've actually already fought each other, but you know, like a veteran versus veteran fight, and Cub Swanson can go out and retire, kind of like how when Jim Miller fought against Cowboy Cerrone, and Cowboy Cerrone retired after fighting Jim Miller. So something like that. That's what I'm trying to get at. But this fight, I thought that there was a chance that Billy Quarantillo may have won the first 2 rounds. I mean, am I wrong about that? I probably am. But what would happen was Cub Swanson probably won the first 4 minutes of round number 1. And then Billy Q just hurt him a lot at the end of the round and got a takedown, but he didn't do anything with the takedown. But he hurt Swanson. I thought he rocked Swanson a lot more than Swanson rocked him, but I think round one's up for debate. You could give it to either guy. And then round two happens, and I actually thought that Billy Q was landing the better shots in round two. I thought that Billy Q did more damage in round two against Cub Swanson. But the problem with Billy Q was every time he hurt Cub Swanson on the feet, every time he hurt Cub Swanson on the feet, he would clinch and shoot for a takedown. Every single time. Cub Swanson's there, he's hurt, he's rocked. You've got now an opportunity to land some body shots. You've got some opportunities to maybe even try and knock him out now at this point. And he would clinch and he would shoot a takedown every single time. And I ultimately think that's probably what lost him the fight. But this was a war, this was a battle. If Cub Swanson retired on a high like this, it would be quite cool. But maybe Cub Swanson probably wants to retire in California because represents California quite a bit, if I'm not mistaken, unless that SoCal tattoo means something completely else. No, he's from California. I think he probably wants to retire there. So maybe if they do an event in California in the Big 25, maybe then Cub Swanson can fight a veteran and then retire on that. Joaquin Buckley did defeat Colby Covington, and I am going to now call him Joaquin Buckley because this man made me a lot of money tonight. I'm very happy with Joaquin Buckley. Now, the reason why I've called him Joaquin Buckley forever is because I grew up and a childhood friend of mine. Now, we're not really talking anymore. We're not really friends anymore. But like when you've got a friend from primary school to early high school, his name was Joaquin. So now I've spent half my life, maybe 60 to 70% of my life, reading this name and calling my friend Joaquin. And now Joaquin Buckley comes in with the same spelling, the same name, and it's pronounced completely different. Completely different. So he's not Joaquin Buckley anymore. He's Joaquin Buckley now, and he beat up Colby Covington quite good. Now, I think a lot of people are complaining about the stoppage. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't think like 99% of the people complaining about the stoppage are doctors either. I will say that, but it kind of looked like Colby could probably kept on going, but it probably was the best finish for Covington because it did look like at one point Buckley was going to knock him out. Buckley started out the first round quite well, and Covington, honestly, just throughout the whole fight, looked bad. And I just think that maybe Covington being like, he's not even pushing 40. Like, this guy is like, he is 40, right? I mean, he's 36. Yeah, he's about to be 37. So he is 40 years old, nearly old enough to be my father. And I think the father time has caught up to him, man. The short notice probably caught up to him as well. And he just didn't look like the same guy that fought Kamaru Usman 2 times. And he didn't even look like the same guy that fought Jorge Masvidal either, by the way. He just didn't really look great. I mean, the boxing was very untechnical. Now, that's not really uncalled for or unknown about Covington, but he just kind of didn't look that comfortable on the feet. And even when he was shooting takedowns, this is more of a credit to Buckley than anything, but even when he was shooting takedowns, he just couldn't get them. I think Buckley defended every single one except for 1 or 2 takedowns throughout the entire fight, which was pretty impressive. And whenever the fight was on the feet, Buckley was just trying to take his head off, man. Like, some of the shots that Buckley was throwing and missing would have knocked out Covington. I mean, Buckley was just absolutely throwing huge uppercuts. He was throwing huge hooks as well. And of course, throughout the whole fight as well, Colby was just bleeding. He was hurt. He was bleeding the whole time. And I think the first round, Buckley landed like a right hook or something that did cut. No, it was on Colby's right side. So it must have been a left hook. It must have been a left hook that hurt Colby. Nonetheless, something happened to Colby. He got cut in the fight. And he just started bleeding in the first round. And Colby did probably what you're just not meant to do. And he just kept like wiping it and rubbing it. And like that's like the worst thing to do, because especially in between the rounds, the cutman would dry up the situation. He would, I don't know what they put on, but like it must be Vaseline that they put on to cover up the eye, cover up the cut. And then Colby would stand up, and within the next 30 seconds, Colby's wiping the cut again to get the blood out of his eye. I guess like I understand, but you've just wiped off all the Vaseline. You've just wiped off all of the whatever it is that the cut man has tried to do to stop the cut. So you've kind of reversed what the cut man did. So there was blood everywhere, and the thing about the situation with the cut is it did like the fights have gone on with worse cuts. They have, that is true. But the thing about a lot of the cuts is just the fact of where it was. Like it was on his eyelid, and the doctor said he's gonna lose his eyelid if it gets cut too much. And if he does lose his eyelid, I mean, I think that's like a very serious problem to have, because I don't know if you can get eyelid replacements. Like, I'm not a doctor, but you know, I don't know. It could have been bad. It's always about the placement, you know. Like cuts have gone on above the eyebrow that were pretty serious. I mean, I remember Song Yadong when he fought against, it must have been Piotr Jan. He had the massive cut over his eyebrow, and he kept getting allowed to go out. No, it was Corey Sanhagen, sorry, and he kept getting allowed to go out. And then all of a sudden, when the cut started to get down into here, the doctor was like, nah, I'm not allowing this to happen anymore. So it was the placement, really, of the cut. But another thing about the cut was the blood, man. Colby Covington was bleeding so much from his eye. Like, I do understand, like if you do cut, like, get a cut on your forehead or on your face, like, you do bleed, like, a lot, because, you know, once again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm assuming there's a lot of blood up here, because that's where your brain is. And he was bleeding, like, a lot out of his eye. Like, there was a lot of blood. When he got the takedown on Buckley, there was blood everywhere, man. There's blood all over his face. And the third round, when it was stopped, it was just leaking, like, it was all over the right side of his cheek. Like, it was pretty intense stuff. But this is a 26-minute review of the card. It was a good card. I liked it. Sounds like something's burning. Probably a good time to stop the video. But yeah, I'm going to try and make more content throughout the next 3 weeks. But I didn't really do much this week. Just kind of stuff has gone on. Like, I'm working pretty long hours, and then something's happened, like, in my personal life as well, which could be rough. Should someone in my family has been, like, very sick and might not have much time to go, is all I'll say. So if that happens, I'll be quite upset, and I probably won't make content for a while. But I don't know, guys. I mean, we've got a 3 week break now. If anything, I don't mind the break, just personally, because I did the Contender Series for 10 weeks straight, on top of the UFC, on top of the PFL, and that was, like, just a lot of MMA. Like, that was so much MMA, and you guys know that I watch a lot of MMA. Like, the Z Fight Night that happened, unfortunately, Doroshkov lost, and I think Mateus Camilo is the guy that beat him. He's now been signed to the UFC, by the way. But yeah, I just I don't know. You get burnt out, you do. And I mean, I'm not gonna complain, because I really do enjoy making videos. But yeah, just a lot going on. I'll see you guys in the next one.